It's the Awake Space with Laurie Rivers, and this week I've got more inspiration to help you with your aspirations, getting them out in the world. We've got a lot of big shifts this week and the uncommonly good day, and no, I can't tell you why, but it's not it, okay? If it's it, then it's it, but I'm not saying it is it. Capiche? All right. I'm tired of people putting words in my mouth. If I thought it was that, I'd be up front. Okay. So, but we do have Uranus moving into Gemini on the 26th or the 25th, depending on where you live in the world. There's a lot of kind of fear mongering around Uranus moving through the signs or how it's going to impact different placements. And we're going to set the record straight on that. It is a big shift of energy. However, that can be a good thing. I also tapped into my magazine subscribers and asked if there was anything they wanted help with this week on the podcast. And I think this is going to make it a long one. We'll get to that up front here in probably the second segment. As always, huge gratitude out to the Awake Space community. And you can now reach us differently. Instead of going to the Patreon, blah, 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 blah. You can just go to the awakespacepodcast.com. That's a great way to find us. And look for both the free posts as well as the subscriber only. Without community, we wouldn't be here. And I've had such beautiful messages in the last couple of weeks from people I've done readings for, from community members, and how the support given has really made a difference in their lives. So when we come together, interconnected, interdependent, not codependent, not hyper independent, we can make a big change in the world. And that's going to be some of the themes with Uranus and Gemini. Some of them. Some of it's Mars conjunct Saturn right now, and boy, we're lucky they're conjunct. I'll talk a little bit about that in the first segment. Wild times we live in. I wasn't kidding. Last year when I reminded you we're going through some of the biggest changes since the end of the Bronze Age, but that doesn't mean it can't be good for you personally. And that's our focus here. If you want to know what's up in the headlines, you'll have to go into the Patreon and subscribe. I've pulled those back because I want to just give all that love to the people who support the podcast. However, I have a new archivist. I do. Somebody who's keeping track of the record. And I'll talk about that coming up next as well, because we've got some statistics on the predictions from the 2026 year ahead. And it's kind of exciting news. So big shout out to Ralph. If you're in the community, you know who I'm talking about. The man who comes with the blinds, the entertainment blinds. He is now my official archivist, and I want to thank him. He's doing a great job getting it all put together. Get your tea, get your coffee, get your matcha, get your Red Bull, get your hot cocoa, depending on where you live in the world. Get your bevy of choice. Definitely stay hydrated. And whether you're going to work, sitting on a train, taking a vacay, getting the kids ready for the end of school year, taking the dog or the cat out for a walk, or sitting on that vibration plate, we're going to do it together. So I don't know if you've been part of the community and experienced some of the hiccups and the bugs that we've had in the chats where people couldn't post memes or emojis and photos and share the pictures of their wonderful culinary creations, their gardens, and that's a lot of what we focus on in the community, because I've been banging the drum of be prepared for years and years, long before I was ever on TikTok, knowing that we were going through massive systemic change and that you wanted to have as much control over anything you can have control over as possible, because being overly reliant on systems would leave us, would keep us vulnerable, and we want to guard against that as much as possible. I'm not talking about being emotionally vulnerable. I'm talking about physically vulnerable. Now, the whole thing isn't going to collapse all at once. The people who say that, There have always been people who said that. It doesn't mean that we're not going to see more accelerated change as Uranus moves into Gemini, but it doesn't mean it's going to be a complete collapse. There's always a remnant of institutional security. Oh, that's the stuff we know and depend upon. But how things go about day to day or the availability of things may change. So we do a lot of sharing of recipes and gardening tips, and if you're at the magazine level and up, you have access to the Astrology of Gardening, the recording, as well as the zine. I was calling it a booklet, but somebody told me it was cooler to call it a zine. But anyway, and it's super cute. But anywho, it's going to continue to be wild. And that's why I ask in my magazine chat, and that's for any of the tiers that get the magazine, so 15 and up. And ask, hey, what do you want to know? And we'll cover that coming up in the next segment. For now, I am going to crow a little bit and talk about the archiving of predictions. And so we have the 2026 predictions, and those I put it out last June, and then I did a follow-up in December. The slides didn't really change. I think I might have added one or two things before the December, but they usually don't change a lot. Okay. And so that's something to understand. This year's year ahead, which will happen June 28th, is for 2027. And everybody who signs up for the June event will get the planning guide. Because people ask me for a planning guide, and I was like, I don't know. I put up the year ahead, but I realized, 2 hours or more a video is a lot to go through. So instead of just putting out the slide deck, I'm making a planner so you can mark the important dates for you and things to keep your eye on, and then just, plan your way through the energy, So working on that now. But at the beginning of every month, I'm going to do something new, both here on the podcast and in the Patreon, because Ralph is amazing and has already started putting together a little slide share of what I got right. And so I just want to go through some of that with you. Damn meticulous is what I got. So he's got one for the 2026 year ahead predictions, and I need to change my glasses so I can read this. So long distance glasses off, reading glasses on. Alrighty. For January, he just took from the slides that I use for any of my year ahead predictions. I make a really big slide deck. So January 2026 begins with financial matters on deck. They're not necessarily bad financially. In fact, it could be better than expected or not as big of a loss with a question mark. It could be announced, the announcement of fourth quarter earnings question mark, though it could be financial loss due to property damage, due to storms, floods, and catastrophic acts. So this is the news stories. Q4 earnings season gets off to a solid start. That came out January 14th, 2026 on Yahoo Finance. There's another set. Global markets advance on solid corporate earnings, Q4 roundup. That comes from Capital Group, January 7th, 2026. There's a bunch more. Climate change presses on. Devastating wildfires and intense thunderstorms exacerbate losses for insurers. And that came out on the 13th of 2026. And this was from Munichre. That's MUNICHRE.com. Anyway, that's just a couple. There's like 3-4 more. That was just for that first paragraph. So, Matt is not Al Zahira. Al Manzur's lost city in Al Andalus was discovered. That was a headline from January 14th. That's kind of cool. See, it's not all bad news. There's cool stuff. I have a really funny one that came in. But anyway, I'm not going to bore you with all of it, but it's so far sitting at, 10 for 10 right now for every single one. There's multiple confirmations coming in. Great Britain faces leadership challenge, leadership strain, could see a vote of no confidence, or opposition could be thwarted, exposed, or ousted. Starmer vows to resist leadership challenges is one of the headlines that came. This is just for January. The danger points that could make 2026 a difficult year for Starmer. Another headline, citing secret plot, UK Conservative Party fires a senior lawmaker. February is many pages. Getting to March, I believe. It could be March. Tech industry kicks off with a bang. I mean, there's like so many proofs here. I had in March GCC countries under strain, and of course they have been. That's Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, UAE, Saudi, and Oman, all under strain because of what's going on. And they might this month see some stabilization. I know it doesn't look like it this week, but we may see stabilization after the 23rd. Mid-March could see the fall of at least one regime in the world. There's a lot of strain in leadership, and we see strain in leadership all year. So one of the predictions that I had was we could see new cool animation, and somebody pointed out, and I was like, "Oh, Fireflies said they're gonna do an animated series." Okay, because I'm a Firefly fan, but what it ended up being was the Lego movies. I mean, it was really clear that there was cool animation coming out. So I just think it's really funny that I predicted the Lego movies. Anyway, instead of boring you all here on the podcast, if you are a patron, every single month you'll see the updated proof of those 2026 predictions, which is super fun. Speaking of predictions, Matilda and I are doing another charts and channeling event May 17th. And we're going to take a look at June, July, and August. We did our last one in October last year, and those predictions started coming in the time period we were looking at, just bing, bang, boom. And we'll be getting some proof videos up on the TikTok and the YouTube and everywhere else that we're on. And again, the event is on May 16th in the United States at 5 p.m. Pacific, or May 17th in the rest of the world. And why I said 17th is because I will be possibly in the UK at that time. I leave for the UK on the 5th, but we're also going to be doing some other travel on the continent. What if we run out of jet fuel and we can't come back? Oh no, may I be stuck in France with the stinky cheese. Daughter and I are going to be doing a lot of recording, both just out and about, but also a lot of the projects like healing the money wound, getting batches done for the podcast, and all sorts of fun things. And she'll be able to zhuzh me up because I really can't see to do that anymore. So, and she's there, so I'm joining, and we haven't seen each other in almost 2 years. We've never gone this long physically apart. So that'll be super fun, and we're going to be recording together as well. So you're going to see some upgrades, which is super fun. So before I go on to the next segment, after my crowing, let's talk about Mars conjunct Saturn, because it's still happening as I record, and for the next week or so, even as it separates off, because they're kind of pacing each other right now. And Mars conjunct Saturn, we're really lucky, is going on. Okay, because Saturn is kind of making Mars behave a little bit. So Mars is a little less impulsive, even though it's in Aries. And it's like, hey, if you want to make a difference, if you want to hit your mark, then you need to be a little more strategic. You can't go willy-nilly out in the world. And notice the people who are being chaotic in the world are getting a lot of pushback right now, because the energy is saying that is not the vibe. That is not the vibe. So, That's going on right now. We'll talk a little bit about how you can use that. Okay. So, how can you use that energy? How can you use the Mars-Saturn conjunction to your advantage this week? Even once Mars starts moving on its merry way as it separates out. Well, first of all, you want to take a breath whenever you're feeling something. If you've got your temper going, if you're feeling a little more reactive, understand instant consequences. Instant consequences. All right. You will lose on that one. Even if the person you're coming at doesn't want to engage and you keep going, you'll get a consequence either from people who witness it or people who like that person. Or, you could be laughing at someone who just fell down and then whoops, there's a banana peel out of nowhere and it's on you. I was going to just do this next segment, but I had a question that was like dittoed by multiple people. And it was like, how do we find our motivation right now? If you're feeling really tired, people are either feeling one of two ways right now. There are those who are just really tired, feeling like they're walking in mud. And there's other people who are just like, I can do it all right now. I've had every stimulant you could possibly have. I am one of those people. But I felt like I was walking in mud when Mars was at the end of Aries. It was just, it was so much. And I started feeling the lift. So, one, understand that motivation may not be what you need right now. You may be needing to listen to your body. Okay. It may not be the time to do it all. I had another person ditto on to that question and say, between this and the household and the husband and the kids and having to do blah, 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 I'm going to say you're putting so much responsibility on yourself and not inviting other people to participate in that. I would invite people, if they want attention, to solicit that attention and to recognize all of the things that are going on. I would also let go of outcomes, understanding, depending on the age of your kids, that there are things they can do to participate and they may not be done exactly the way you want them done. If the dishes get put away and a spoon ends up in the fork slot, it is not the end of the world. Easily fixed. Okay. If they mix their socks and their sweatshirt and nothing ends up stinking, fine. So we can invite and invest our kids to participate as a household. I am not a big fan of the idea that kids shouldn't have to participate, because if they don't learn when they're young, it makes it very difficult to do when they're older. So you're equipping them with life skills, not using them for child labor, obviously within age appropriateness, right? A 3-year-old isn't probably going to do their laundry, but they can put it in the laundry basket. They can learn how to do that. I remember when I was like 4, my great grandma started teaching me how to ironing hankies, cloth hankies. She was born in 1899, so she had those things around. And then pillowcases. It wasn't because she needed help ironing. It was to teach me a life skill. Okay, I should have probably paid more attention because I'm not good at ironing. If I don't have to do too much of it, it feels cozy because it puts me back to those memories of her teaching me how not to burn myself and how to do it nicely, because all cultivated ladies have well ironed hankies. Don't you know? Don't you know? So inviting investing people to participate is a good one. Motivation isn't always what we need. Sometimes we need to take the clue that it's time to rest and recalibrate. Mars conjunct Saturn is about doing strategic structure, about making sure our actions have an end game, that creating a foundation for ourselves makes it easier for us to be of service to others. Okay, so if we aren't taking care of us, we fall apart, we break down, we get sick. And it's not our job to worry about unless you got little kids. Different story. If you've got kids, the priority there is keeping them alive, right? But, if your spouse has needs, and you are overworked and overtired, then there might need to be a little renegotiation on how things work. And you shouldn't have to give them jobs to do. If they live in the same household, they know there's dishes to wash. They know there's laundry to do. They know there's vacuuming. They know if you're both working full time and you're taking on the lion's share, it's not fair. So you've got to argue for your own fairness and be like, if you want the attention, you know what looks really sexy? Washing dishes, vacuuming without me reminding you. I used to have a saying which was like, if you see it, fix it. Don't wait to tell me about it. Especially the other adult in the house. I was like, okay, I get it when the kids say it, but you're not a kid. Just if you saw a problem, fix it. We're all grown-ups. It's not all my job. So this is a good time to declare what is and isn't your job. And I'm not saying blast somebody. I'll just be like, you know what? I really need help with that right now. And it would be more helpful if I didn't have to remind everybody. And if you still need reminders, maybe we need to have a whiteboard up that we check. And it's your job to check the whiteboard. And you can add things to it if you need me to remember something to help you. It doesn't have to be all one-sided. So I think a lot of times, especially people socialize female, but not always. I think a lot of times we take on too much. And we can't be mad about it when we don't ask for backup. We can be mad about it if we've asked for backup and somebody doesn't back us up. Because people who say, well, I'm tired after work, and you also work, and you're like, so am I. So am I. And by the way, if you don't work outside the home, but you work at home, and that includes raising children, you're still working. You are still working. Probably harder than you will ever work in an office. So there's that. Measure out what you can actually do and be effective in with Mars conjunct Saturn. Now, it's going to be separating up as we go through the week, and you probably won't feel as tired. In fact, you might get a great big jolt of energy when Mars really separates off Saturn and Uranus slides into Gemini. I'm a little hesitant about that one personally, just because anytime my Jupiter-Uranus conjunction gets tapped by a transit, especially a trine, the sleep is not steady. It's going to be like, all right, Chaos Goblin time, and you just kind of have to roll with it. So right now it's more about surfing the cosmic tide than fighting it. Fighting it is just going to make you tired or more hyper. So that's that first question. Thank you to those who dittoed each other in the Awake Space magazine chat. It's also Q&A. So I thought, hey, let's put the Q&A in here. There is that. It's just going to be interesting as we go through this week. So we will go to the next segment and we'll talk about Uranus in Gemini and what we can expect. But before that, we'll actually talk about the Venus-Uranus conjunction at 29 degrees of Taurus on April 23rd. And no, it's not it. I don't think we're going to see it. I think I've figured out the modern medicine, though. And if you're in the Patreon, you know what I'm thinking. The modern medicine is in the way of a lot of the outcome people want most. And so, especially now that I think I have it figured out, I'm like, that they're just going to run that body to zombie level 10. But we could see a further decline mentally as we go through the week. It's pretty obvious that somebody's being propped up like a marionette. But let's talk about in the next segment, before we get to Uranus and Gemini, we will talk about how to use the energy of the 23rd to our advantage. So we're coming up to that uncommonly good day in 2026. And if you've noticed, the energy is starting to shift. I think most of us are just tired of having our adrenals overloaded. That could be some of it. But also, it's becoming so transparent that we're watching people left, right, and center just kind of go, okay, this is nuts. So those of us who thought it was nuts for a long time are just kind of like, yep, there it is. Or Venus conjunct Uranus in Taurus at 29 degrees. We won't ever see this again in our lifetimes. It's not got any harsh aspects to it. None. In fact, it's boosted by the moon in Cancer in the earlier hours of the day. So I think before lunchtime, I'll have to take a look. So on the 22nd, we have the moon conjunct Jupiter that really expands that desire for security, and we're gonna hear more people pushing for security. And then there's a real boost in the market sometime like starting around 10 a.m. ish. This would be California. So there's good economic news. Things bounce up on the 22nd. They stay bounced up. They rise. Be ready for a sell off. But in the first little bit, we see things go like there's a move for stability that comes out of the blue. That's why I said it's an uncommonly good day. And Cancer is a financial sign as much as Taurus is. So we might have better news on commodities like food, like consumer goods that people need, the necessities. There could even be some improvement in the housing market. I don't think it's a big crash, but there's some kind of movement there. But globally, maybe there's some movement of trade or goods or services. That's what I think it is. Do I think it's it? I don't really think so. Again, if I'm wrong about that, I'm okay. I'm not gonna lie. It's not something I'm gonna disagree about. Saying, yeah, okay, cool, but I just don't want people to get their hopes up. I just don't see that being the reason. But there could be something to do with that. There could be some leadership changes, with Mars conjunct Saturn. That's one of the things that can mean we could see changes in leadership, but that's global as well. There's more to this world than the United States. I don't think people understand that. And those of you in other countries listening, whether you're from Ireland or Canada or Zimbabwe or Seychelles or Germany or whatever, if I don't mention a country, assume it could be yours. I only mention things when I'm really certain about the direction. Okay. If I'm very certain about the direction, then I give names. But other than that, the transits are global. We live on a small planet. It's a small rock floating in space. Predictions are not always localized. So, and as a global citizen, I'm an internationalist versus a globalist. I always intend it to be global, but I talk about where I live because that's where I live. Okay. I talk about the United States. That's where 85% of my listeners are from. I'm very excited that, 15% are global. That's very cool. So when I give leadership changes, look at your own news, see what's going on there. All right. Because I'm not excluding anybody. There's also some regions of the world where I'm not as informed about that. And in order to predict or forecast, we have to have some information around. That's why I also don't do governor's races or state rep races or state senate races. I don't have the time or inclination to know everything about that individual space because that would inform which direction I'm going. So astrology requires some kind of context or it's a wide berth of subjects. That's why I'll be like, okay, this is personal energy. This is mundane energy. This is political. This is weather. My weather has been like 100% this year. just boom, 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 called the dates of storms, etc., the kinds of storms, which I'm very proud of. That's a harder form of astrology to do. So that's the one that kind of broke my brain to learn really, and so getting those ones right and being able to warn people and prepare people for potential weather events, that I've been very proud of. So thank you for letting me know, guys. Every time you let me know, and again, we'll get the proof out to everybody. Mars conjunct Saturn is the time to think before you act. Remind yourself there's consequences. Is it worth the jail time? That's a question I used to ask myself a lot. Is it worth the jail time? Oh, it's only funny in hindsight. It wasn't funny at the time. With Uranus conjunct Venus, there could just be a generalized good feeling. It could just be a beautiful day and the flowers are blooming. You see hope on the horizon. There's good food. Your tech works. No one understands how important that is. Think about it when you're trying to do something a little more techy and you try it, you follow the instructions, and nope, it didn't work, and nope, it didn't work. Well, that may not happen that day. That day, your tech might work. Your pillow may be cold. Your blankets might be just the right temperature. Your poached eggs may come out perfected. It's that kind of energy. Don't hold on to too many outside expectations. Just don't. Just don't. So there we go. It's time for some community news and welcoming our newest patrons. I always give a shout out because, again, without you, there is no me. I absolutely appreciate everything. And if you were struggling with the app at all over the last almost year now, those fixes are coming in. I finally got them to hear us. And I'm really proud of our forum. Those of you who participated helped get the chat situation fixed, not just for me, not just for you, but for every creator on that app. And that was kind of one of the points I made when I filed the complaints. I was like, hey, it's hurting me and it's hurting my community members. But imagine if you were just getting started, how demoralizing that would be. Imagine if you'd finally reached a benchmark and then out of the blue, things started going haywire. You'd want to quit. And so, out of my love for all people creative, all people being of service and teaching the skills they know or sharing their information, their art, their music, I was like, come on, get this stuff fixed. And so, thanks to it took a community to do it. And I just wanted you to know you should be proud for participating in finding solutions, because that's what this era is all about. Alrighty, coming up next, community news. And do we have news to share? What's going on in the Awake Space community? Well, we've got some cool stuff. Number one, we just did the natal aspects class for the astrology crew, and we were focusing on Jupiter. That comes up as a recording for everyone in the astrology crew or the retired tiers that kind of filled that spot for a while. We debuted the cover of Living by Luna last week, and I'm working on getting that done, which honestly, the book is done. I just have to kind of see where it's going to be delivered. We'll get those files moving into where you can grab it for a POD, and it will be Awake Space members who find out about it first so they can grab their stuff. I'll be doing some recordings for Living by Luna while I'm in the UK, and that's exciting. Yay. Just teaching you how to use it, how to pay attention to the moon and not just use it predictively, but to really understand yourself and your energy levels. If you go back and you listen to last week's episode, episode 22, then you'll find out more about the ebb and the flow of life and understanding our rhythms and being able to grab onto life a little more deliberately when we understand how the energy on a cyclical monthly process operates for us as we go through the year. It really, really helps and is really useful. So that's all stuff we've done in the community, talked about, and our patron only podcast put out another astrologers roundtable. And put that out to our community in the awake space first. You'll be able to listen to it here, which is how to prepare for an astrology consult. Okay. I'm not, too often people conflate astrology quote unquote readings. I like to call them consultations because that's what astrologers really do. We help you find the solutions to the problems that you're experiencing or helping you make the decisions with clarity that are most aligned with who you are, to help you on your healing path. Know that you're probably not as crazy as you think you are. And being prepared for that reading makes it much more valuable. So the astrologers of the awake space got together at the round table and talked about that. We actually got ahead of things and batch recorded together so that we could we didn't have to worry about our schedule. Oh, we're all free right now, let's do it. So we did, but we did little costume changes. That was fun. Yeah, so there is a ton of stuff coming up. Trying to think about it. Oh yeah, if you're a patron at the Astrology Crew, remember you can use your special link to sign up for chart level reading level 1. You save $100, and I have just a couple more spots left at the scholarship that is for $77 off. You get a PDF that's fillable. I teach you how to look at the chart without getting confuddled and overwhelmed, and give you a process for taking notes to gain clarity and help you with your interpretation. You gotta know the symbols. You gotta know the symbols. You gotta know how to draw the chart on software. This is not a basic beginning class. If you do want to learn beginning is, if you're just getting started, or you maybe have looked at things a little bit, like, well, I know what a big 3 is, or I can find my ascendant, then go check out my videos at the Awake Space community. There's a pinned post, and it links up the free resources. It links up the different layers of membership resources, and there's so much there. There's so much there. Take advantage of it. It's the pinned post at the Awake Space community at theawakespacepodcast.com, because we can use that now, and that's exciting. We've been having some good lives in the community. That's been good. We did a slumber party on Saturday night. No, I'm not going to post a replay on that. Those are never safe for work, never safe for children. I did talk a little astrology on there, but it was more to lighten the mood. I know things are heavy right now, and it's really important to stay as buoyant as possible. So without further ado, let's welcome our newest members. We've got Amelia, Deborah, Jen, Sarah, Katie, beautiful scars, Lydia, Jen, Hippie Mystic, Wendy, Amanda, Joanna, Tiffany, Molly, April, Grace, Amanda, Denise, Ash, Inovid, Illyria, Debbie, Cora, Lucy, Emily, Marissa, Shabnam, GNGN, B, Sinson, Ava, Christina, sorry, my eyes are tired. Sarah, Teresa, M.H., Kelly, Susie, Siobhan, Veronica, Marcy, Christy, Annie, Jocelyn, Janelle, Gabriella, Joanna, Jen, Shania, Tiffany, Kathy, Jackie, Kelsey, Ann, Chelsea. 2 different Chelseas, by the way. Claudia, Maggie, Diane, Ciara, Lauren, Selena, Reptile Girl, Ash, Oren, Alyssa, Olivia, Marie, Shay, Tori, Brittany, Sherry, Amanda, Sue, Joan, Sarah, Debbie, Brandy, and Anna Carey. It's good to see you guys. And thanks for being part of what keeps this podcast going. All right, coming up next, we're going to talk about Uranus in Gemini and answer a few questions by the members of the Awake Space. Hey, have you been studying astrology, and every time you look at a chart, like everything you know pops out of your head because the symbols and the squiggles and the pizza slices are suddenly not making sense anymore. Like you understand them individually, but when you look at the chart, you don't know where to begin. Do you start with the sun? Do you start with the moon? Do you look at the aspects? It can be really overwhelming, and it doesn't mean you're bad at astrology. So you're not confused because astrology is complicated. You're confused because nobody showed you where to start. And I'm going to change that on April 23rd. April 23rd, 2026, with chart reading level 1. Yes, that means there'll be a level 2 and a level 3. In this class, what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through a simple process to organize the chart. And it's a process I teach my readers. Okay. But this is not going to make you a professional. All right. It doesn't give you that experience, but it does help clear the confusion and the confuddlement. It's a simple process to organize the chart. You can take clean notes and build a foundation for real interpretation, because when you look like the guy with all the string on the map and you're like, well, it means this, and you're speaking astrologicalese to yourself, it just adds to confusion. So we don't really want to do that. It's going to help you learn how to filter out the noise, like take things a step at a time, and know what matters before you start making meaning out of things. That's where most people get stuck. They try to interpret before they organize the notes, and you don't want to do that. That's why everything goes out of your brain. So in this class, I'm going to teach you exactly where to start when you open a chart, how to organize the placements so they stop feeling scattered, how to take notes that lead to insight instead of overwhelm, what to focus on first and what to put to the side, and how to build clarity before interpretation. You already need to know your glyphs, that means the symbols. You need to be able to locate degrees and minutes in the signs, how to understand where the house cusps are. And it does not, and I'm going to repeat that, it does not certify you to be a professional. If you want to sign up for that, I still have a few spots left where you can save $77 for a 2-hour lecture that comes with the recording, as well as a fillable PDF to help keep your notes clean. And so you don't have to try to remember the structure. It's just step by step by step. Remember, knowledge isn't power unless you know what to do with it. I'm looking forward to seeing you there. All right, let's talk about Uranus in Gemini. The last time it ingressed for us was actually last summer. And if you noticed, from about May through September, things were a little lighter. It didn't mean there wasn't crazy stuff going on. There was. But the energy itself wasn't as intense as Uranus in Taurus. Partially because Uranus in Taurus was more mature in its sign, but also Uranus in Taurus is a little heavier. It was in Taurus during the Great Depression. It was there until 1941, and you count 7 years back from that. So the time Uranus moved into Gemini was in 1941 in August. Okay. And then it retrograded back, and then it moved back into Gemini in 42. That gave us a lot of innovation. Yes, it was during World War II, but what happened in World War II? There was a lot of innovation in communications, in coding, computers. rudimentary stuff. But that's where a lot of inventions were made. There were torpedoes and missiles and things like that, and we're seeing that now with drones, etc. So that will accelerate that kind of technology. There's probably going to be new ways of communicating. Then we might see innovations in cell phone technology or computing, and AI, but we're at the very nascence of that. We're nowhere near where those AI bosses are trying to tell us they are, because it's not even close to conscious. And I don't think it will be by the end of Uranus and Gemini either. On a personal level, Uranus kind of shakes things up. It opens our awareness. It's where we get our epiphanies. It's not just, oh my God, where'd my stability go? That was unique to Taurus. Uranus in Gemini is really a good time to tune into your guidance, to open those channels. We'll probably hear a lot about channeling, beyond Bashar, beyond Abraham and Abraham Hicks. Everybody can do it. And that's something both of those two individuals who channel entities have said. I channel. In fact, my latest meditation for Patreon is channeled. I just don't go announcing that. I put music under it. And some of you caught the accent shift. It's honestly a shift in channeling. Yeah, it's there to kind of gain people's attention for whatever, to say, hey, this is different. You can have, and channeling can happen in a lot of different ways. It could be automatic writing. It can just be in a flow state. You could have eureka moments where thoughts just pop in, all of that. That is all possible. To me, the energy is a lot lighter. Okay. You've had to innovate for your security's sake. That continues over time. Hopefully, with the Venus-Uranus conjunction in Taurus this week, you are able to say, oh, wow, I've navigated through this time, and it might have been hard and I might have had challenges, but look at what I managed to accomplish for myself. Okay. That's super, duperty important. We have to celebrate our wins, no matter how small, right now, because there are certainly people who would like to take away those from us, right? So it could innovate travel. Jets came into being the last time Uranus in Gemini happened. It's not a real surprise that we're fighting over fossil fuels, which are so last century. And so I think there'll be some interesting moves when it comes to alternative fuels. What we see is alternative. How we move power, how we use power, and I'm talking about electricity, how we generate it. I think we're going to have to. And on the more negative side, we're going to see more missile action, more drone action, disrupted communication or disruptive communication. But there will also be a lot of humor. So if you look at the 7 years, 1941 to 1948, which is the last time Uranus was in Gemini, there were some really good comedies. And I think that's because when life is hard, you need to laugh, You can't just sit and cry and lament. You have to lighten things up a little bit. That's why we do slumber parties in the awake space, where we're silly and a little ribald, and it's not safe for work or children. There's a reason. Because if you just sit in the heaviness, the law of inertia takes hold, and Uranus and Gemini ain't going to allow inertia to stand. It's going to be like, oh, you're stuck? Here, let's zap you to move you. It's not always a personal attack on us. The universe isn't punishing us. It's not making hard things happen on purpose for us. We didn't necessarily agree to go through the trials and tribulations we do. I know there's people who say we do. In my experience, as an energy worker, the whole of my life, someone interested in philosophy and religion and theology the whole of my life, and then a practitioner for longer than I've been an astrologer of various energy works and processes, whether it's channeling or healing modalities. As you know, if you're in the community and you need some Reiki, let me know. I'll send it. That's not part of what I do professionally. It's part of what I do as a world server. You know, been attuned since '99. So I just turn it on. We'll see innovations in our understandings of how energy works. I think we'll see a lot of cool stuff come out in quantum mechanics, string theory, etc., multiverses, things like that. There'll be maybe some proof coming out and that changes people's perspectives, those who are willing. What I will say is those who are not willing to adapt will have their fannies in a sling. And if you're in Great Britain, I didn't mean your kind. I meant buttocks. But 90% of the difficulties we have with outer circumstances is our resistance to that. And I'm not saying we have to sit there and go, oh, yay, there's a despot. No. But when we can look at it and go, okay, that's what's up on deck right now. What can I do? How do I work inside of these parameters I'm living in? Not a giving up, not a quitting, not saying agreeing with it. I'm saying when you look at what you can do in front of you in the moment, that's how you surf the cosmic tide to your advantage. And that puts a dent in their plan of making you scared, of making you give your power up, etc. If you really want to be moving forward and helping in your community, then you need to communicate in different ways. And I don't think analog is the only way to go. I don't think we need to dump social media. I don't. I think we'll see changes to it. I think we already have, and I think we'll see more changes. But if you give up and you walk away, the only people using it are the jerks, just like when we disenfranchise ourselves financially. It's a very good time to be entrepreneurial. It's a very good time to learn those skills. I am not saying quit your day job, I'm saying build those skills and maybe bring a little something extra in. Learning how to communicate what matters to you most and allowing your guidance to help you do that. That's all stuff that's up on deck as we move through these interesting times. And I know we got July 3rd and 4th with Mars conjunct Uranus, but we'll talk about that in another episode, okay? Let's just for a moment enjoy that it will be a little lighter, a little funnier, you know, a little. There's still going to be some WTF moments. I'm not going to lie. But that trine between Uranus and Pluto will continue to be very, very interesting. You know, because it moves, in the minute it moves in at 0 degrees, it's still in a trine because it's only 5 degrees separation. We'll see things move and shift and groove over time. On a personal level, the best way you can make use of this energy is to allow the knowing to be, not the worry, not the doubt, not catastrophizing, but really listening to guidance and hearing the subtle influence or allowing that crazy idea that pops in your head to be something you take for serious and you write it out and you know journal about it. And I remember years ago having an epiphany that took a weekend to write out. It was just, it wouldn't stop. It was just, you know, when people talk about downloads, this was like a fire hose. I filled up a 5-subject notebook and I was very isolated. I had no network. You know, this is years ago now. And I sat there and I was like, so what do you want me to do with this? I don't know anybody. I'm stuck on this stupid rock. How am I supposed to get this out into the world? And you know, funny enough, it just did. I was like, well, if you want me to get it out there, then you need to open the doors. And one of the thoughts that popped into my head was, of course. And you need to pay attention to when they're open. You need to pay attention to the doors that are opening instead of the ones that close. There'll be many paths available to you during the next 7 years. And remember, these thoughts can be like a lightning bolt. It can be like, aha, it might feel crazy. It doesn't mean you are or it is. It just may be a little prompt to get started to build momentum, because nothing happens out of the blue. It has to build. You have to beat the law of inertia. Because if you stop, it's hard to get going again. But what is the law of inertia? An object in motion stays in motion. So if you've been stuck, you got to take an action to get moving. And that goes back to that how do we find motivation question. Do something, anything. Rest, and then pick something that sounds interesting to do. It does not have to be super serious. It could be blowing bubbles. It could be playing a video game. It could be listening to music. It could be getting up and walking across the living room just to shift the energy. And that's going to be a really important skill as we go through the next 7 years. There's that. Now, I wanted to find the rest of the questions asked by the patrons, because they're really meeting the themes of the week. From Squid Mama, I really liked what you shared with me the other day about reframing. Bring a notebook with you so you can track the energy and the ideas. Because so often, and if you can remember back to last summer, you might have popcorn brain, right? Where just idea after idea, not all of them great, kept popping into your head. Some of them seemed really out there, but now they might make more sense because you have some context. Get a journal, keep it with you, or a notebook, and keep it with you. And as you go about your day, or you're sitting at your desk or whatever, write those things down, because you're not going to remember them. They may not be for right now. They might be for 2 years from now, and they'll suddenly make sense. Get that stuff written down, especially like next week. That's your mind might just be popping full of ideas. You can have $1 million ideas. Okay, some of them may not be monetizing at all, but I know for me, I get a jillion ideas all the time because I have a very active Mercury in my chart. So one of the reasons I became a business consultant is because I do have a gajillion ideas all the time. I'm solution oriented and I'm results oriented. I can't possibly use all those in my lifetime. I might as well help other people, right? And so you can write those down. They might help your clients, they might help your friends, they might help your family when the ideas pop in. Just write them down. Don't shove them on anybody. We don't need people proselytizing. We don't need evangelicals in the astrological world. It always gets me when people are trying to evangelize astrology, and I'm like, please deconstruct your early childhood in evangelical church. Please deconstruct that. Astrology does not need evangelicalism. It has been practiced for 5,000 years plus. It will be here long after we are gone. We don't need it evangelized. If it works for you, it works for you, and you can talk about how that works for you. I think we're going to see some really cool astrological insights. I think people are going to be less predatory in some ways with it. I mean, and when it is predatory, it'll be obvious out in the world with Uranus and Gemini. But yeah, so Squid Mama. I'm glad that helped, Squid Mama. It feels let's see. And then from Dear Riley. Riley's one of my OGs. In fact, one of my OG TikTok followers as well. How can we move out of feelings and habits of codependency to more interdependency? There's a lot of messaging that's about focusing on yourself, which I agree with, but my relationships are an extremely important part of my well-being. How can we navigate our relationships given all the energy of change in the air as well? That is a big question. And then she followed up with, or are we going to get the most out of the current energy by just focusing on ourselves? Well, I don't think it's mutually exclusive. I think when we look at like codependency, we have to understand what it is. So when I'm saying focus on you and your energy, it doesn't mean, especially like if you have relationships with family, it doesn't mean you ignore people. but it means that you're not taking on other people's journeys as personal to you. Okay. Unless you have little ones that you're responsible for their staying alive, because they're kind of an extension of you energetically until they're about 8 or 9 years old from an esoteric perspective. Okay. Their energy system is entwined with their parents or the person caretaking them. Okay. So that's a little different. But when we're looking at our relationship with our mom and dad, or our siblings, or our cousins, or our best friends, it is not taking on their struggles as personal to us. Because, first of all, if we're letting that devastate us, then we can't really be a support to them. The codependency is owning the struggle, feeling responsible for their pain, feeling responsible for their healing outcomes. And that's tough. I mean, people end up either enablers, or they end up um taking on the guilt, shame, and blame that doesn't belong to them. And we can love somebody and see somebody for who they are, truly at a soul level, and understand that they have problems. So, especially like if you're dealing with people who have chemical dependency in any way. All right. And it's so easy to think you can love them out of it, to rack your brains about, what could I have done differently so this person made better choices? Probably nothing. Probably not a damn thing, because those choices were theirs to make, right? And at a certain point in my personal experience, dealing with somebody with substance abuse issues, is it started with a choice, and then things snowball and it's no longer a choice. I watched that happen to someone I loved very, very much. I still love them. They've passed away and I still love them. And they were the greatest love of my life. And remember the day the decision was made. And I remember the day it was no longer a decision, but rather it was a trap. When you are feeling responsible for their outcomes, that is codependency. Interdependency happens when you can see that person for who they are at a soul level. You can see where their reality is. You can see what you can do about it and what you can't. And if it is impairing your ability to function and thrive, then yes, thinking about your own survival is essential, because going down with the ship is not honorable, because it's harming you. And it's easy to do when you feel guilty, when you feel like, man, I could have loved harder, I could have done more. What could I have done to rescue them? Interdependence has nothing to do with rescue, unless somebody's like literally fallen into the pool and needs a pair of floaties, right? But if you jump into the pool without the floaties, they can take you down, right? So it's important to understand the difference. We can think of ourselves and bring our energy into center, and know that makes us much more able to be in interdependent relationships. Not one time I saying ignore people, don't want to comfort them. Comforting is not rescuing. If your friend is having a hard time, a hard day, checking in and saying, hey, how are you doing? But trying to fix it for them with unsolicited advice isn't going to help. That's taking on their problem. There are questions we can ask people, like, what have you tried before? Have you investigated things? What do you think about that? You can walk people through it. You can walk side by side for a while. But what you don't want to do is get them on your back and carry them, because that impedes your journey too. Unless they've broken their leg and you need to get them somewhere. Maybe you're both in a canyon. Then at that point, yeah, carry them up. But those are extreme examples, right? So when I say focus on what you can do right in front of you, bring your energy in, what I'm talking about is in big world events, there is jack all you can do. Taking on the pain of people who are facing disaster or war does not soothe their pain. It doesn't solve their problem. That isn't even empathy. It's toxic. We can empathize, and in that empathizing say, what can I do about it? Because maybe I can donate somewhere. Maybe I can send aid. And if there's nothing you can do, you can witness. But the pain isn't yours. That's rude. It's rude. And I say that as somebody whose experiences were used by other people to achieve certain ends. My pain became their pain. My trauma became their trauma. And it was almost as if I wasn't allowed to have my own experiences. So I'm touchy on this subject because it's rude. You don't want to try to take away people's pain. And I learned to do that myself when I was younger, right? So because it was done to me, that was a model I had to work with. And good people are trying to alleviate other people's suffering. And yeah, but you don't take on their suffering because it's disingenuous. You can understand there's suffering in the world and there are needs that need to be met. And if you're disabling yourself by owning too much of the situation, you're not able to be a support. So to me, when we do gather our energy inside, it allows us to be more functional, to be of service to others. But if we're pouring from an empty cup or unwittingly disabling ourselves or disarming ourselves, disenfranchising ourselves because we feel guilty about what's going on in any situation, we are not able to be of service. And to me, being a human being on this planet is a privilege. And one of our privileges is we get to be of service. We get to help other people, but that isn't owning their pain. It's the ability to be a neutral observer. That doesn't mean neutrality politically at all, but being able to look at what's going on, see it for what it is, and then say what need to be addressed. How do we find the solutions to these problems? And we can't do that in a panic. We can't do that when we're so emotionally overwhelmed. We can't take one more step when we can't get out of bed. And that's why I say you're a transmitter as much as you're a receiver. We are all part of the collective. We are. And we're able to transmit. And I got a comment on YouTube, not from Susan, but I got a comment on YouTube from somebody saying, "Are you sure, Laurie? Because I only know how to absorb." And I'm like, yeah, I am sure because you haven't learned how. Okay. There are ways to transmit the energy, but one, you have to come to center to do it. You have to be authentically connected to self in order to be of service, where you can send calm. Everybody wants peace, love, and light, but you know what? You're busy wrestling inside of yourself with things. You're at war with yourself. That guilt is a weapon of war. That over-identification with suffering is a weapon of war because it disarms your ability to transmit peace and love and harmony and hope. So centering into yourself is about empowering you to be able to take the next logical step, to be of service in the best way you can. So if you've got people going through it, you can listen. You can care about them. You can feel sad that they're going through it. And you can be kind enough to say, how can I support you? And they may want you to jump in the pool with them. They may want you to witness their suffering. And we can say, I look forward to the day that this is a much better situation. We can know what their favorite comfort food is and send them a care package or Venmo them something, here, go out and get a coffee. If we don't live near, right? Sometimes when I know somebody's having a hard day, I'll order flowers, like they've had a hard, forget a day, had a hard month or something. If it's somebody who lives close, I might cook for them. My dad does that. He had a good friend of his, and remember, they're octogenarians, and this good friend of his is like 8 years older than him, so he's like 88. And his wife had to have a major surgery, and this person doesn't cook. So my dad made a bunch of meatloaves because he knew this guy loved meatloaf, but wasn't good at cooking. And the wife couldn't do it. She was recovering from a major surgery. And the guy was like, geez, did you buy out the meat counter? And my dad was like, yeah, but you can freeze this and reheat it and make sandwiches. And the guy was like, oh, smart. That was a compassionate move, understanding that the dynamic in that household changed. But my dad did not call him up and say, did you eat? That would have not been interdependent. The interdependency was witnessing your household is having a difficulty. I value you as a member of my community. Here's some food to make it easier while your wife is recovering. And although the wife was a little annoyed because she doesn't like him eating meatloaf because, it's not always the best to eat en masse, and the guy loves it. But my dad's like, we're in our 80s. Come on, let us have the meatloaf, right? But the interdependency was, I see there's a struggle. Let me give some support. That's something I can do, but I can't make you eat it. I can't make you warm it up. If he went to take on the responsibility of feeding him, like by spoon feeding, that would have been codependent. He trusted his friend enough to be like, hey, I gave you food, so now you can eat. I bet you're going to eat it, right? And I hope this makes sense of it. Because it just popped into my head. And I was like, that's a really good example of interdependency. I value you in my community. I know you're going through a hard time. Here's something to make it that much easier. Did it get rid of all of the struggle? No, but it diminished one thing that could be too much on someone's plate. Because it would be easy for his friend to not eat or eat not enough because he is older, and if he's worried or stubborn, he might not. So making it easier to choose to eat by having food he liked. Okay, that's one way we can support people. But my dad didn't take on the worry and the fear for his friend. He knows what it's like to have a spouse be ill, and vice versa with my mom. They've walked each other through a lot, but they're not codependent with one another. And that was a big lesson for my mom because my mom was highly codependent. Highly. And so was I. It took me a long, long time to learn how not to be. Because this culture is codependent. All the music, I can't live without you. Yeah, you can. Trust me. Love of my life died. Died long before I left him. I'm still alive. I'm still alive. It didn't feel like I would when I first left. But we carry on. And we can love people to the moon and back. But we can't be responsible for their decisions because those are theirs. So if they're doing things that aren't good for themselves, if they're not coping with their stress, we can offer to walk with them to a solution, but we can't make them. And it is not our fault when they choose a direction that does not offer healing. Also, there are some people who are super negative, and you can love them to death, but they bring you down. Like they're always complaining, they're always moaning, they're always bitching. And if you don't kind of put boundaries around that, you'll notice your own energy level starts to dip. And maybe even like you can see changes in your revenue. You can see changes in your marketing. You can see changes at work. You can see, and because emotions are contagious. And so that person who doesn't know how to use Hope Core to their advantage or be solution oriented or can't break the habit of constant complaint, even when things are going right, it might be somebody you need to take a step back from. Doesn't mean you have to end the relationship. It doesn't have to be either or. It can be and both. But those people who can't handle when you're in a good mood or you're happy or good things are going your way and they're having their time with the bumps and the hurdles and what have you, especially if you've walked them through those, if you've walked them through those times and they're not happy for your successes or your good news, I'm not saying end the friendship or end the relationship with your family, but it might be time to put up a boundary and maybe communicate less, make yourself less available, guarding your energy so you can like go, oh, wait a minute, this is in my hands. I can't be being codependent would be like that dirty, rotten, negative human being is why these shitty things are going on. No, it's not them. You put your attention in the same bucket as theirs, and so you haven't been looking at solutions or you haven't been keeping your own energy up. Not saying high vibe only. But the habit of complaint is bad for the brain. That is a neuroscience fact. And it also shuts down your ability to make decisions with clarity. So if the economy is wibbly wobbly, you want to be able to adapt and adjust on a dime. If you're in the muck and the mire and the fog and the fuzz, you can't do that. And if other people rely on you, let's say you hire a virtual assistant or your family depends on it, and you're allowing that slide to happen, then it is on you. And you can't blame anybody else for it. It's easy to blame people, but it isn't necessarily the truth because when things are in your hands and you are centered and coming from a point of clarity, it doesn't mean you don't have bumps and bruises, but it's easier to deal with them. And I say all of this because Uranus and Gemini is going to switch the energy up. And if you can work with it and not resist it, you will be able to be like, to me, like in my head, I'm seeing parasailing and paragliding and being able, you've got a glider and you're able to move around with it. But if you get heavy and tense, you're going to go whoop, boom. If you have an addiction to worry, if you have an addiction and you'd be like, but Laurie, I have anxiety. I get you. I get you. I used to. I had off the charts CPTSD. And actually, the actual diagnosis was post-traumatic stress disorder with severe anxiety and clinical depression. All of that got healed through walking the walk, through process, doing a mix of therapeutic process with actual physical processes, some of which is actually in the work and in the ANI process in Laurie's test lab. It's encoded in everything I teach. I get it. But when we own it and we don't address things because we've been taught to believe these things aren't fixable, there's a reason in healing the money wound. It starts with you are not broken, you adapted. Because let me tell you, there's an entire industry that really thrives off you believing you're broken. Several industries. Our minds are amazing. And I'm not saying everybody can get to zero clinical markers, which is wellness. I get what it's like being able to catastrophize. Just because I healed doesn't mean I don't remember. I was really good at that. But if we live in worry, doubt, fear, We up the odds of that being our experience because we do not see the windows of opportunity to take action. Your brain does what you tell it to. And if you're only worried, your brain trains into the problems. This is neuroscience. It's not just my opinion. And you can also tune your attention so it seeks solutions. And they may look crazy. They may look weird, but they help you move forward. One direction keeps you stuck. The other direction moves you forward. Uranus and Gemini is the perfect opportunity to make forward movements, develop clarity of thinking, shift out of the addiction to a belief. It can make the solutions we not want to see in the world. And sometimes those are little teeny tiny everyday decisions. The decision to get up and keep moving every single day is huge. Just huge. I think I have one more question I'm going to answer. And then let's see. So I got asked, I've been wondering how I can channel the spicy change of Uranus and Gemini into positive fuel for personal change. I've been hearing a lot of chatter about how it affects the signs. I always listen for sun, moon, rising and try to pick out what feels applicable. But if there's anything as an individual I can think about both personally and collectively, that would be great. And a lot of what I've talked about covers that. In the patron only podcast this week, I will go through Uranus moving through the houses. Because it's not just if it's on your sun, your moon, or your rising. You're being offered the opportunity to innovate how you deal with that area of life that the house represents, whether you have placements in that house or not. There is energy throughout your chart. You have all 12 signs, there's all energy. And I realize the cutesy tootsies online are repeating what they've heard, but they haven't actually studied. So they overemphasize. I don't think it's all I don't think it's as heavy. I don't. There are always things that happen in the world, whether you were aware of them or not. So, like, a lot of people are like, oh, since 2008 or 2012. No, that's when you became aware of things. As somebody who's been aware since they were a little kid, the world has always been fucked up. There's always been crazy shit. There's always been leaders who abuse power. Maybe they had better rhetoric. But like, somebody asked me about war crimes, which I've answered in the Patreon. But I pointed out there's a reason the United States never ratified agreement to be in the ICC, the International Criminal Court, because every single administration has breached international law, including the admins you are more favorable about. It's just the rhetoric was better. The propaganda was prettier. We're looking at historical levels of WTF right now. But some of it is not. In fact, a lot of it isn't new. This is just the most out there. And we're going to watch that get stronger. But sometimes we need things to get out there to make a difference, to make a change. And sometimes it's a distraction from being truly of service. Alrighty. For more, you can hit the Patreon only this week. Anyway, that's what I got for you. Don't forget to sign up for chart reading level 1. And if you don't want to learn how to read charts, but you're interested in predictions, make sure you sign up for charts and channeling. We're not giving out discounts. We gave our patrons first dibs on tickets because we've kept it very, very affordable. We know how things are, and Matilda and I are dedicated to giving you that access because the next couple of months are going to be wild, but it's not just Uranus and Gemini's fault. We're going to find out more on May 16th/17th. Have a beautiful week. Remember, on a personal level, you can have a great day, a great week, a great month, a great year.